lot of the tactics and strategies that once worked no longer work anymore.
Those long intros that add no value, yeah, they've got to be gone by now, yeah.
So what's working on YouTube right now?
You should never be stretching out a video beyond its means. You've got to keep the pace up throughout the video, otherwise they're going to drop off. If you're not going to have a niche, you need to still have a clear idea of who your audience are. The short form, it shouldn't be a piece of content where you're like, well, if they watch the long form after, then they'll get it. They need to get it in the short form. When it comes to the hook, I need to write that down. I need to cut out the fluff and I need to get it to a really good point because it's one of the most important parts of your videos.
So if you're feeling frustrated with the amount of views and growth you're getting on YouTube, I don't blame you, because a lot of the tactics and strategies that once worked no longer work anymore. So what's working on YouTube right now? What are some of the best tips and strategies for growing? Today on the Think Media podcast, I'm talking to Jade Beason. Now, she has a first-class honors degree in marketing. She's spent over 8 years working with international brands, and she's got 174,000 subscribers on her YouTube channel. Talks about a lot of social media platforms, but has some unique YouTube insights that we definitely need to know. Jade, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So I'm fired up to have you on. Let's get right into like a lightning tip. What is one of the biggest things that just doesn't work on YouTube anymore?
So, okay, where would I even start? The biggest one that I feel like doesn't work on YouTube anymore is, do you remember when everyone used to have really long trailers to their videos? It'd be about a minute long, heavy on the graphics, no value would be delivered, but that would be the first minute of your video. And the way our audience's minds work in terms of our attention spans, they're just getting shorter and shorter, mostly because of the rise of short form content, right? And I do feel like we're seeing the effects of that trickle through to even our longer videos on YouTube now, where yes, we can still retain someone's attention for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, amazing, but we do need to pay attention to how quickly we actually grab their attention, you know? I think previously we had the luxury of maybe taking a few minutes to warm up. We don't have that anymore. So those long welcome sequences, those intros that add no value, yeah, they've got to be gone by now, yeah.
Is there anything you think about, like phrases you like to say, or when you're planning out social media content, specifically YouTube, but you're big on Instagram as well, that you do to hook attention? Yeah.
So I always like to dive really deep into my audience. So I have a really good idea of who they are and what their pain points are. But when I'm prepping for a video and when I'm trying to figure out what the hook's going to be, I really want to spend some time figuring out a way for me to clearly articulate that this video is going to help them with whatever pain point they're currently going through. The quickest I can do that, the better. And I think we're getting to a point now where even a few years ago, I could hook someone in within the first 30 seconds and that would be fine. But now we're getting to the point where you even have to think about the format of the hook. So even if you're spending a whole sentence warming up to the hook, it's still too long. You've got to really figure it out that way. So the hook is probably the one part of my video that I script. I like to work off of prompts and let myself freely talk. And if I need to edit afterwards, then I will. But when it comes to the hook, I need to write that down. I need to cut out the fluff and I need to get it to a really good point because it's one of the most important parts of your videos.
So you recently released a video and it was about some of the mistakes and things that are not working. And you mentioned focusing on watch time. And so people think, okay, on YouTube, it's click-through rate, it's average view duration, that's what it is. But breakdowns, that's kind of an anti-tip in a way of maybe what common thought around YouTube would be. So unpack what your thinking is there.
Yeah, for sure. So just through the years of working with other creators, specifically creators who are trying to get monetized. So it's a common pain point that a lot of creators have. They're like, look, I've got the subscribers, but I don't have the watch hours yet. And I just noticed there was a mistake that a lot of creators were making in the sense that they were focused on getting those watch hours out, but the way that they were doing it was by focusing on trying to get 100% retention. So they were like, okay, what I need to do is I need to film a video, upload it, and I need 100% of those people to watch a good chunk of it. And sometimes I would look at their data in the YouTube studio and I would say, do you know what? It's great what you're doing and it's helping the quality of your content completely. But if you continue to upload 5-minute videos and you are getting 80% retention, that's great for your channel. If we're trying to get watch hours up, then we need to bring some of that effort into your longer videos too. Because yeah, you could get 50% watch time on a 5-minute video and then there you've just gained 2.5 minutes. Amazing. But what if you got 50% watch time on a 20-minute video? Because then you've got 10 minutes of watch time. And if you multiply that by the amount of people who are now seeing your content, because YouTube are seeing the fact that not only are people watching a good chunk of your video, but they're actually on your channel for a while. Like there's 10 minutes they're going to be on your channel for. And at the end of the day, YouTube is like every other social media platform in the sense that they will reward the creators who are keeping people on their platform for as long as possible. So I feel like the slight switch in approach can actually massively help people reach their watch hours quicker, but also benefit the quality of their channel as well.
So it's an age-old question when people say, what is the ideal length of a YouTube video?
Yes.
So are you leaning towards longer form? What minutes are you targeting and why?
Such a good question. There's never a direct answer. And I always wish I had one. I always wish I could be like, oh, actually, it's 10 minutes. And there's just no direct answer. I would say in my early days, when I was really, really focused on trying to get those watch hours up, I was purposely creating videos which were longer. So my average was between 10 to 20 minutes. And I was purposely creating videos that are a bit longer so that I could really help with that watch time. Now my average is more between 10 to 15 minutes. It's not a primary objective of mine, but it is still something that I'm working on. In terms of everyone else, when someone else asks me, I always just say you should never be stretching out a video beyond its means. You don't want to be filling space, because the point, what we were speaking about before in terms of hooking your audience, that doesn't end at the start. Like you've got to keep the pace up throughout the video, otherwise they're going to drop off. So if you find yourself in a position where you're like, okay, let's drag this out for another 5 minutes. I wonder if I can waffle for a little bit longer. Then you already know that you're not going to win that game. So it's about trying to find topics or, planning a video that can be a substantial length while still retaining a good pace. That's the real sweet spot. And it's not the easiest thing to do.
So right now, saying that you're kind of 10 to 15, that's a sweet spot for you.
Yeah.
And are you also uploading YouTube Shorts?
I am uploading YouTube Shorts, yes.
How often? What are your results?
So at the moment, because I've just refreshed my strategy slightly, I do want to focus on uploading between 2 to 4 per week. I very much focus on repurposing. So my YouTube content is like my hero content. Everything trickles down from that because all my videos take so much research and so much planning. So it's like that should really be the core source of content and everything else will come from it. So my strategy at the moment is to actually plan ahead when I'm prepping my YouTube video to give some thought as to what this would look like as a short, which I think is a mistake that some people make when they're repurposing. I think they kind of focus on the long form, don't think too much about what that would look like once it's cut down. And then later on, they're like, oh, how do I make this into a 60-second? And then you end up with something that's a bit fluffy and it doesn't quite work. Really, in order for that kind of repurposing to truly work, the short form needs to be able to stand by itself. So it shouldn't be a piece of content where you're like, well, if they watch the long form after, then they'll get it. They need to get it in the short form. So for me, I will think about that when I'm prepping. And essentially I will write down like hooks for all the short forms and for all the sections. And then I film my whole video. And then at the end, I just like give a quick verbal brief to my video editor. And I'll be like, I'm about to just say a bunch of hooks. And then I read all the hooks and then he edits it all together. So therefore it's got the hook, it's got the value, and it stands alone by itself.
And you say those hooks on camera.
I say them
so you
on
record
camera.
them separately after.
Yeah.
But it's all part of your research process to get that dialed in.
Yeah.
When did you transition to a video editor? How did you hire them and where did you find them?
Yeah, I made that decision really early. My first hire, actually, and the best hire I've just ever had. I always say, I think there's often two different types of creators. There are creators who love editing and they find it quite calming. And I always say, if you love it, then retain it. Like that's amazing. I wasn't one of those creators. And when I started my channel, I was still working full time. I had like other businesses on the side. I was very, very time poor. So as soon as I was monetized and I was earning some money through my channel, which was about 7-8 months in, I immediately hired a video editor and literally got back so much time. I actually did a whole audit on all of my time and where it was spent, and then started to hire like based off the audit, because I was spending like 8 to 12 hours a week or something editing, because it wasn't a natural skill that I had. So therefore it took longer to create something that wasn't as good as what someone else could do in half the time, you know? In terms of how I found my editor, I was very fortunate because he emailed me. And that's why like the cold email pitches, they do work. Like if you get someone at the right time, he got me at the right time. I actually did a trial video with a few different editors, and his was the best. I just felt like he understood what I was going for. And then we've really evolved over time. So whenever I'm like, actually, I want to switch things up, can we try this? Even if it's not a skill set that he has, he'll be like, I'll learn it, let's figure it out. And I'd much rather do that than kind of chop and change all the time. I'd rather we just develop and grow together.
That's so cool. Do you think that that's one of the biggest mistakes like people you coach and content creators make, is maybe being afraid of hiring or waiting too long?
Yeah, for sure. Especially with the editing, because even with someone you've worked with for a long time, even then it's hard to articulate what you're going for, because people can't read your mind. And that's just the way it is. It's always so difficult to outsource as a creator, because a lot of the time what you're producing is so personal to you, and you really want it to be a reflection of who you are. So therefore giving someone else that power can be so daunting and scary. But there's also something to say for the fact that there are other people who can do something better than you.
Yeah.
You know?
So smart. One of the other topics you hit was creative tools. As far as what's working or what's not working, break that one down.
Yeah, for sure. So there are so many different tools, especially now with the rise of AI, like there's just more and more. There are so many different tools that a lot of creators don't know about or use at all. The one that I find myself talking about the most recently is Google Trends. It's been around for so long, but I think maybe people are just waking up and realizing like, actually, not only is this a really valuable tool, but it's literally created by Google. So the data is all like first party data, like it's literally their data. So for anyone listening who doesn't know what I'm talking about, trends.google.com is a website which allows you to search different keywords and then measure the traffic of those keywords over time. And you can actually filter it based on your location. You can filter it based on YouTube specifically. So you can see like how many people are searching for a specific topic at different points of the year. So for me, for example, my niche is quite, I mean, we have a very similar niche. It's quite seasonal, like Q4, Q1, blowing up. Middle of the year, not so much. So entering keywords into Google Trends and just figuring out when's the best time for me to upload this video can do wonders for your account, because every creator often has seasons with their topic, and that's completely normal. But being in the know is just going to help you. Do
you structure your year based on seasons, trying to show up strong Q4, Q1, and then maybe schedule vacations or time off? Do you have you kind of built around that?
Yeah, I do now. I haven't before. It took me a little while. I've only been on YouTube for 3 years, to be fair. So I feel like this is the first year where I can really clearly see the seasons, because you don't want to jump the gun and look at your analytics from 1 year and be like, oh, well, I figured it out. These are my peaks, because you don't know yet. You need a decent amount of data. And I think I've just got to the point where I'm like, okay, I can clearly see some patterns here. So now I definitely do. Even when it comes to the business side of what I do and like my membership and stuff like that, like even in terms of when I'm going to do a bit of a push and a launch, I will purposely put it at times where I know there'll be peaks. And yeah, with holidays, because I didn't do that last year, and it was hard because then I was away at times where I felt like I wanted to be working, which you never want to feel that way. So yeah, I'm definitely getting more tactical with that now.
Okay, so this is probably the most controversial conversation in online and YouTube.
Ooh,
and
okay.
It's to niche.
God, what are you about to ask me?
Well, I was kind of, spicing it up for the hook of the micro, but it really is. I mean, to niche or not to niche.
Yes.
And so when it comes to what's working on YouTube right now, you might have one person shouting, the riches are in the niches. You got to niche down. Niche. The riches are in the niches. Or not. So this was part of what you were talking about, some of the mistakes people make. What do you think the 2024 State of the Union on niching down is? The biggest virtual event for content creators is happening May 23rd through the 25th with Gary Vaynerchuk, Dave Ramsey, Patrick Bet-David, Ali Abdal, Cody Sanchez, Shalene Johnson, Pat Flynn, and so much more. Just click the link around this video to get the most affordable ticket price twice in history for Grow with Video Summit. This is your chance to get access to top video experts, to network in our exclusive app and connect with creators and entrepreneurs around the world that are using video, and to leave this 3-day virtual event with a step-by-step plan for how to grow your personal brand, your business, and ultimately monetize your content in new and multiple ways. All happening at Grow with Video Summit. So click the link around this video to learn more and get your ticket before prices go up.
My opinion on it, specifically on YouTube, is that we're in an environment right now where you don't have to be as dictated by a niche as you used to. I think it's always worth saying that if you have a niche and the more refined that niche is, the easier it will be for you to grow, just simply. So it doesn't mean that it's going to be easier for you to not have a niche anymore, because I don't know if that's ever going to be the case. It's always easier with a niche. YouTube finds it easier to understand who to recommend your content to because it's consistent. If someone, your perfect ideal audience, finds one of your videos, they're then going to find a whole bank of videos that they also love because you have one niche. It's always going to be easier, right? I just think we're in a situation now where you can still see success without it, even though it could be harder. I think the biggest point though is if you're not going to have a niche, you need to still have a clear idea of who your audience are. And I think that's where the mistake comes in, because people think, oh, okay, I can just talk to anyone, or, when people say, well, I don't want to, put myself in a box, and I don't want to make my audience size smaller by only speaking to a certain group of people. But I'm like, if you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. You've still got to have a good idea of who your audience are. And maybe it's not that your audience are like bound together by one interest, because that would be a niche. Maybe it's more that they're bound together by their life stage. So maybe you're talking about different things, but the way in which you're talking about them appeals to that specific type of person where they are in life. That's when you're still going to be able to see success without a niche.
So if you were talking to millennial mothers, cooking is something they're doing.
Yeah.
Education and reading is something they're doing. Homeschool or public school. So these things seem like they're separate interests and topics, but they all are categorized really. In this case, it's not what you do, it's the who that you're reaching.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other big mistake I think with niching as well is sometimes when you're new to this world and someone says to you, okay, you need a niche, what you're hearing is you should only care about one thing. And I think people get really thrown off by it because they're like, well, I love loads of things. I'm a multi-passionate human being. And then they look around and they think, well, all these other creators seem to only be passionate about this one thing. And that's not true. Like I'm passionate about so many things. I don't talk about them online, but I'm passionate about loads of different things. So it doesn't mean that you can only care about one thing. Like you can still keep your other hobbies and interests if you have a niche.
I love that. Have you seen the trend that everyone's talking about right now on YouTube as it pertains to authenticity?
Yes, I have. I also feel like for the last couple of years, just the word authentic has become quite the buzzword.
Yeah.
And then when something becomes a buzzword, it loses meaning, I feel.
Well, in 2023, the most searched word on Merriam-Webster was the word authentic.
Really? Well,
and I think people are trying to figure out what it means.
Yeah.
But also in response, this hunger for authenticity was kind of in response to kind of starting in 2020 and starting in the pandemic. And perhaps it's misinformation. There's always been fake gurus, but the rise of fake gurus. Who do I trust? Can I trust people? Ravi's session here at Social Media Marketing World, there was a study that said we're actually at the lowest level of trusting others in 40 years, statistically. And he's calling it a trust recession.
Right.
And so that is interesting you say that, because it could be Brene Brown talking about vulnerability, and yet Michael Stelzner just talked about like we got to be vulnerable. And so authenticity and vulnerability isn't new, and it's always been powerful. But how do you feel in terms of, even as I watch your content, it feels very conversational and it feels polished but stripped down. Is your packaging intentional? Is it just you being you, or are you being thoughtful about the state of maybe content being overproduced or over edited, or what is your thinking in terms of reaching people and some of these trends that are happening on the platform?
Yeah, for sure. So the way I've always approached the topic of authenticity is, from my opinion, it's often overcomplicated, because to be authentic online is quite literally just to be yourself. So it doesn't mean that you should be crying online if that's not something that you would do, you know? There was definitely a moment where it was like, to be authentic, you need to show yourself at your lowest low online. And I was like, that's not authentic to you though. So that's actually the opposite of what that is. So from the beginning, I always wanted to show up exactly as I was. So when certain things happen, like I've got videos where the photos on the back of like behind me in my set, they fall down all the time. I don't know why, I've still not figured out how to keep them up. They fall down and I'll leave it in. You know, there was once a spider hanging from my camera, I will leave that in. Moments where I feel like is more of a reflection of how I'm actually feeling, how I would react naturally as a person, I like to purposely leave those in, you know? So I guess that's the kind of unpolished element of how I approach my content. The polished elements and the bits that I don't leave in is just simply when I'm not effectively communicating a point, because that's really the whole purpose of my content. If I feel like at any point I'm not saying something in which someone will be able to clearly understand it and then use it for their own purpose, then that's what I'll leave out. But other stuff where I feel like it's literally just me, I'll leave in. And that's what I've kind of done from the beginning. And I do think I kind of benefited from the fact that the whole conversation about authenticity started to happen when I was like a year into my journey. So people would often say to me like, how is it that you're so authentic? And honestly, it's just that I am myself online, and that is literally how everyone else can do it. So I think we tend to overthink it, unfortunately.
One of the things that's not working right now, you say, is focusing on views. What should people be focusing on instead?
Yeah. So it's gonna depend on your goals for your platform, right? So having some part of your activity focused on getting views is always amazing. I think what I'm starting to notice is when you are so focused on optimizing for views, sometimes you can miss out on opportunities where you're actually going to optimize for engagement and just connection. And I do that even now. And that's why I use present test, because I still make that mistake. The algorithm and YouTube Studio are so great at telling you what's working. It will tell you this is what's going to get you the most views to your channel. And if you solely focus on that and you continue to replicate content based on that data, you will miss out on opportunities to create a more behind the scenes video, which your audience who are so close to becoming advocates for your channel would love. They see something like that and they're like, now I feel like I know Jade. So yes, she's teaching me stuff, but now I feel like I know her. And when you have that group of people who feel that way, that's the most valuable thing that you can have for your channel. And a lot of us miss out on having people like that in our audience because we are only optimizing for views and we're never optimizing for engagement, especially on a platform like YouTube.
With everybody focused on views, what do you think is the importance of building a brand? And that would be another way of saying what you just said, of actually people that are connected to a brand more than just you triggered the algorithm, you got ranked in search. Are you thoughtful about how you're building your brand and what kind of thinking goes into it?
Yeah, for sure. I think the elements of my brand that I like to make sure are always appearing. Mine are often visual. So things like my overall branding and my approach to all of my content, my editing, all the way through to channel art. That's the kind of part that I tend to have quite a lot of control over and I'm very intentional around. I feel like it leans into the authenticity conversation that we're having previously, because I think that becomes part of your brand as well. And if that means that, you know, your quirks are that, I don't know, you laugh at yourself a lot or you snort like when you laugh, like that's hilarious, that it becomes part of your brand. I feel like when you take that approach, it actually becomes so much easier to build one, because you're literally just letting yourself, like we're also unique already. If you let yourself and your unique quirks play out, and then obviously you've got a handle on things like your brand guidelines, your brand kind of makes itself.
What's your mission?
Yeah. Well, my background was in marketing and I worked in marketing for about 8 years, and I started my YouTube channel and within like 7 months I quit my job and it was my full-time career, and I literally have had the most incredible success since, and I'm so grateful for it. When I look back at that, I think that was quite unfair, because there are so many creators who produce better content than me, who care more about it, who've been doing it for longer, and they're not able to monetize or create a business from it simply because they didn't have the experience that I had. I use my marketing and business experience to massively fast track my journey, and most creators don't have that opportunity. So that is my mission. I just want to plug that gap. It's the smallest knowledge gap, and once you plug it, people are able to do it full time, like their passion. So that's what my mission is.
If you could give yourself 10 years ago some advice to shorten your learning curve to where you are today, what advice would that be?
Start reading nonfiction books now and take them seriously. I've had them for a long time, lots of self-development books. I was gifted a lot of them when I was younger. Don't know what that says about me. And I did not read them. I did not see the value in them. And I only started to see the value in them when I was maybe 27, 28, around the time when I started my YouTube channel, and everything just kind of worked from there. I could have saved myself a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of tears if I had started that level of self-development from an earlier age.
Are you still reading?
Yes.
How often?
Well, at the moment, I read every single day, but I will read like nonfiction in the morning, and then I will read fiction at night, because I can't read nonfiction before bed because it makes my brain like...
What are some of your top recommended books that you think would particularly help the creator or the entrepreneur?
Yeah. So age-old one, 7 Habits, Highly Effective People. That was the first one that I was gifted, and the first one that I actually read properly, and that was kind of my entryway into the world of kind of self-development books. Do you know what I also really love at the moment? Because sometimes I struggle with nonfiction because I also love fiction, which means when I read nonfiction, I struggle with the narrative because I'm so used to there being such like a narrative through my content. So I've really enjoyed reading kind of either biographies or autobiographies from people who created amazing businesses or people who have done incredible things in a similar field. I read one recently. I read Anna Wintour's recently, and that was really good. I'm currently reading Steve Jobs, which is great. Some parts are incredibly dense, but it's very, very interesting. And I found that as a great way to kind of mix up my nonfiction. So I'll read like a more heavy one, like 7 Habits, and then I'll read one more like the Steve Jobs ones, because it has a bit more of a narrative to it.
And is there any business, marketing, or books in social media that you've liked?
I think, okay, another classic is like 1,000 True Fans is a really good one. I don't know if there's any other like specific social media ones that I feel like I've read. I'd have to go back in my notes and tell you.
Let's do our lightning round.
Yeah, sure.
And so this is repeat after me. So okay. I will give you a sentence. You say the first part of the sentence, but you finish it.
Okay.
So my favorite content creation tool right now is?
My favorite content creation tool right now is ChatGPT. I know that's such a basic one. It's ChatGPT at the minute. It's what I'm using the most, mainly because I write a lot of newsletters. I'm currently contributing blog posts for different partners. I'm doing a lot of writing. I'm not a natural writer. I like to talk, and ChatGPT plugs that gap for me. So I basically I will write down what I would have originally said in response to a question, and then ChatGPT will turn it into a formulated answer, and then it just makes my life a lot easier.
Have you found any favorite prompts or things that would be helpful as far as when you have a blank piece of paper that ChatGPT helps with?
Yeah, for sure. So I will always send ChatGPT an example of previous work that I've created where I like the tone of voice, because I think we all know if you just tell ChatGPT to write something for you, even if you give it some good notes so that it's accurate, the tone of voice is almost always incorrect. Like it's almost always wrong. It's very corny, like it's cheese. So I like to send ChatGPT an article that I've written that really like mirrors my tone of voice, and then be like, can you rewrite this in the same tone of voice? And then that's usually a lot better.
Repeat after me. The best way to grow your confidence is?
Oh, that's a good one. The best way to grow your confidence is to create and post more content, by far. That is one of the main ways to do it. I think a lot of us wait until our content is perfect. And I always like to say that if your first post is amazing, then you started way too late. It's not supposed to be good. That's how you get good.
The biggest mistake I've made in my content creator career is?
I'm in an R-ing like I haven't made any mistakes. It's more just that I can't pick one. What's the biggest one out of all of them?
You could say one of the biggest mistakes too, of course.
All right. So one of the biggest mistakes that I made in my content creation career was that I went through a phase where I was listening to critics more than I was listening to supporters. It wasn't a long phase, probably only lasted about a month, but my content started to change as a result of it. And I realized that I was creating content for people who did not like my niche, which is not helpful. You should create content for the people who are interested in your topics already. And if they give you feedback, then great. But you can't please someone who was never going to like what you're producing anyway. So thankfully, I didn't do that for too long.
One habit that serves me daily as a content creator is?
One habit that serves me daily as a content creator is filming every kind of mundane element of my life, not just the interesting parts. So anything from me making a coffee, I will just film it. And then at some point later on that month, I'll realize that that's amazing B-roll. I'll realize that it's a great piece of background footage that I can use for a reel. And I just have a really good folder full of that type of content, and it just really helps me out later on in life.
Amazing tips. In just a second, I do want to get your thoughts on what are kind of your next 3 to 5 moves for 2024 as you look ahead at trends that we could learn from. But before we get there, I want you to shout out where people can follow you and connect with you. Of course, we'll link it up in the show notes. We'll link up 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and any other books or resources like that as well, as always. But break it down. How can people connect with you?
Yes, of course. Well, my name's Jade Beason, and that is my handle across all socials. Find me on YouTube. I feel like anyone listening to this would find some value from my YouTube content. So find me over there.
I love it. So check out the show notes. So Jade, 2024, when you think about whether it's authenticity or where attention is now or where algorithms are now, for you, what is a trend you're paying attention to or kind of trends that are happening, and what are kind of your next few moves so we could learn from some of your thinking?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually looking forward to having a bit of a refresh of my content. Specifically, I've marked like Q2 of the year to have a look at that. I'm going to be going over the formatting of my content, the editing style. I think as an educational creator, one of the biggest challenges I have is not only how can I make my content entertaining, but also like how can I explain theories and concepts visually as well as through what I'm saying in a way that people can understand it better. And I've always noticed that is something that I could improve on. So that will look more like more complex kind of graphics and motion editing and that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going to be looking into when it comes to my YouTube. I'm also going to be exploring more AI tools. There are so many new AI tools in the market, specifically from YouTube. There's quite a few that they're releasing that I don't even have access to yet. And I'm really excited by those because I think it's going to make content creation more accessible for a lot of people, because the wildest idea that you have in your head, you'll be able to create with the use of AI. And we've never really had that before. So I want to lean into that and see how I can make my content even more creative. So those are the main things.
Jade, I appreciate you. And Think Media Podcast, like, rate, subscribe, share. And my name is Sean Cannell, your guide to building a profitable YouTube channel. We'll connect in the next episode. Peace.